So welcome to my video of the Nike Dragonfly and how it compares to a more traditional racing flat. Hello, and I'm here with a pair of Nike Dragonflies. Now these are the very new super spikes from Nike. There's others too from New Balance, Puma, Saucony and so on. So what have you got here? You've got a spike with a Pebax plate in it. And Pebax foam, the same fancy foam as you're going to find in a Vaporfly, which is now banned on the track. So all of the new super shoes are banned on the track. Super spikes are the option. Now, if you're a pro, you're going to wear spikes. You're always going to wear spikes, and you're going to wear the best pair of spikes available to you, which is probably going to be one of the next generation. But what do you do if you're not a pro? So I'm not a pro. The times I'm looking at 16 down to 15 minutes, somewhere in that range. So I'm serious about my running without actually being any good. The question then for me is, what do you wear on the track? So probably worth mentioning, how on earth did I get these? So this is the new colorway. It's called Rawdacious. Quite like it, quite a nice little pun. This is the Tokyo colors. I think you can even see in the middle it's got the sort of 2021 that Nike are going with as their branding. So these came in stock on a Saturday morning. I'd registered to say I was interested. I got an email. Unfortunately, I was at Junior Parkrun. See the picture, I think, here. And by the time I got back, they are sold out. So I kept refreshing through the day, and a pair came in size 10. I'm a 10.5, but I thought, you know what, it's worth risking it. So I ordered them, and actually they fit rather nicely because you wear very thin or no socks, as I'll talk about when it comes to spikes. A 10 is something I can get away with. You've got a bit of leeway there, which you don't have in a road shoe. So I've got a track race coming up, and I thought, well, if I'm going to try and do the track race, I would have done it in Vaporfly. Last year I did a track race. I did it in Vaporfly. They're banned now. So do I wear a Dragonfly or do I wear flats? Now this would always have been flats for me. I wouldn't have bought spikes that weren't super spikes. But then since I have this option, I thought, well, the best thing to do is kind of test it out and find out. So since it's a track race, I thought, what's the best thing to do? It's go on the track. I haven't been on the track very often in my life, maybe 30 times. I've maybe worn spikes 4 or 5 of those times. So I thought, well, the best thing to do is go and try a pair of spikes on the track. But what would I wear otherwise? It would have been the flats. So I need to compare these two. And I need to compare them to the Vaporfly. So what did I do? Well, I went to the track and I did a bit of a series of reps really. It's not a session because I wasn't trying to get fitter. It was just practicing how each thing feels. So I would do 400 meters, 200 meter jog recovery, 400 meters, 200 meter jog recovery, 200 meters. What speed was I looking at? Consistent. So kind of nice race effort for the 400s. And on the 200, I think I've heard it called the speed of joy. As fast as I can go without feeling like I'm working too hard. So 3 minutes then between the sets to give myself a nice chance for my heart rate to come down and see how I feel and put on the next pair of shoes. So no rush, get going, not trying to dig myself into a hole. I want to give a fair comparison between the shoes. I don't want to be starting out the first rep knackered. It's trying to be nice and consistent between them and then see what the result happens. What do I want to see? I want to see how my racing flats compare to my spikes. And what racing flats am I talking about? Well, I've got my Takumi Sen, my Adidas Takumi Sen. They've always been my standard go-to. But then I've got the Reebok Floatride Run Fast Pro. I think these are excellent shoes. I've run a PB in them before. I ran 15:51 last year. So I want to see how they compare to those because they are what I'd be using otherwise. And then I want to switch to the Dragonfly and see, well, how is it to run in spikes for someone like myself? How do my feet react to the lower cushioning, to the harder spikes? We'll see on that one. And then at the same time, I kind of want to compare them to a Vaporfly because the Vaporfly is what I would have used. And super spikes, super shoes, how do the two compare? So what's the measure of success for this session? I guess what I'm comparing the shoes against is on that 200, I'm going as fast as I can go without working too hard. How fast is that? But what I'm also looking at is the speed of the reps and the heart rate within the reps. So if one rep is a lot faster, that's interesting. If the heart rate's a lot higher, that's interesting. If the heart rate's a lot lower, that's interesting. So I want to know about the efficiency of the different shoes in ultimately a race effort. How fast am I going and how hard am I working? The other thing that matters is ultimately subjective feel. How does it feel to run in the different shoes? If it feels awful, if it feels hard, I'm not going to do it. Again, I said it before, Nike's return policy is super generous. So I've got the option to send these back. I've got the option to race in flats. I've got many choices. Do I want to use these? Do I want to race in them? That was the question. Right, so I'm here at the athletics track to try out the new spikes I've got. This is pairbacks, not spikes. Let's try the two compared to each other. What else am I going to test them against? Well, since I'm at the track, I might as well compare them to what's now banned on the track. So I've got a Next Percent 2 to go against, so up against the Vaporfly and my trusty Adidas Takumi Sen spikes. Okay, 442, 200-meter jog recovery, number 1. Takumi. Set number 1 finished. Takumi's. Now it's time for Run Fast Pro. So pairbacks based should be the same as the Dragonfly without the spikes. So set number 2 we'll try flats. Set number 3 is flats.
Don't stop. Don't stop, don't stop, don't stop, don't stop, don't stop, don't.
Set 2, you can tell the difference. These feel nicer. Don't think they're any faster. We'll check that on Strava later, but definite winner. So let's try the spikes. Set number 3. I mean, what do you to say? Here we go. Let's see how hard they are to put on. Okay, wish me luck. Well, that's interesting because they are outstanding. First one way too fast because it felt good. Second one controlled. Still I think my fastest rep. Wow. So just done my 3rd set with the Dragonfly, which were awesome, and now point of comparison, 4th set, not allowed on the track anymore, but it's not a competition. Let's try the Vaporfly. Alright, I've done 3 sets. One more. Let's have a point of comparison. Dragonfly. Wow. Here goes. So, I've just done the set in the Vaporfly. I mean, they are lovely. It's like being back with an old friend. So bouncy, you can feel the cushioning.
Do feel squirmy on the bends, which I've always thought. So, decided I'm going to go and do one more 400 in the Dragonfly, but no socks. So let's see how they are, because I did feel I was shifting a little bit on the bends. So let's see what they're like naked. Last 400, here we go. All done. Interesting. Now time for a cool down. So I've just done my cool down jog, and I realised on the cool down, I don't think I've ever left the house with so much money's worth of stuff. 210, 135. I think I've got these for 110. They're meant to be like 200. That is 350, 450, 525, and that's before you even count things like your phone and your camera. This is ridiculous. Running, I thought, was a cheap hobby when I first set out. Track session done. 4,000 metres of quick running. So now, chocolate milk and home some food.
So, having done the session, how did we get on? Well, I guess first thing is subjective comparisons. Numbers don't tell you a whole lot, they don't tell you everything. So first part, Adidas flats versus Reebok flats. The Reebok flats felt so much more lively, they felt so much more springy, so much more comfortable. There's no doubt, if I'm wearing flats, I'm wearing these rather than the Adidas ones. Comparison number two, the interesting one. What we're talking about now is a flat versus a spike. So again, these are made of the same stuff. These are both the high performance foam. These have got spikes, these have got a plate, these haven't got a plate. They've both got a low stack height. What did they feel different, and what felt different about them? So I just felt like I got much more pop and springiness when I was wearing the spike than when I was wearing the flat. These were a joy to run and they were great, but these I felt like I was just bursting with power. You could just so easily put your foot down and accelerate. I think you noticed it most on the 200 meters. So when I was doing the 200 meters, it just felt like I was instantly accelerating, and I could accelerate at will rather than having to put the effort in to then see it turn into speed. So they definitely felt different, but I'd wanted to see the numbers before I came into a firm conclusion as to if one was particularly better than the other one. You just did notice the snappiness. Next comparison, and this is the really interesting one, is when you're talking about Dragonfly, when you're talking about Vaporfly. How are these different? So when I was running in these, I did feel like my foot was on the ground for longer. I was squishing in and bouncing off. So I forget who it was. The US guy in Chicago said they're like running in trampolines, and they really are, because you bounce in and you bounce out. So they are super squishy and super good for efficiency. Bounding down the road through a marathon, these felt wholly different. They might be the same idea of a plate and fancy foam, but these felt like springs, so instant response rather than bouncing in, bouncing out. You could tell that they were both adding something, but they were adding something very different. Although they are super in the name they've been given by the media, super spikes, super shoes, these do feel very different. They're for track. And I think I understand, I think I get it now, Nike. I think I get where you're going with this. When you're in a 2-hour marathon, when you're in an hour for the half marathon, what you want is something that's going to massively improve your efficiency, bouncing down the road, using as little energy as possible. That's not generally how you see the Olympic 5,000 metres, the 1,500 metres, the 3,000 metres go. What do you see there? Well, you'll see people surge. You'll see people sit and kick. I mean, we're in the UK. Mo Farah is the great example. He has not run anywhere close to the world record and never has, and has got a massive collection of gold medals. How? Because he'd be dropping in 52-second last laps, because he'd be picking up the pace, he'd be surging, he'd be running a much more tactical race. That acceleration that I felt with these in the 200 metres makes much more sense for a track race. I understand where they're coming from, so they've made something that's super responsive. It does maybe improve your efficiency over normal spikes. That I can't really talk about. I'm not going to wear spikes otherwise. But what they've done is create some kind of magic that goes into this and also makes them a bit nicer to run in than normal spikes. Because that's what I can talk about is, did my feet feel okay in them? Yes, they did feel okay. Did they feel brilliant? Not as good as the Vaporfly, but they felt good. So what am I going to do for the race? Well, I think there's only one answer for that one. It was going to be the Dragonfly. So what did I do next? I managed to get all the data off. So I've got a collection of programs. You've got Strava, you've got Fetch Everyone, you've got Garmin, you've got a lot of them. Which one did I use for this? I was wearing my heart rate monitor with all the run dynamics from my Garmin. I'm not wearing it now, I've got a Garmin 630. And what that gives you is things like stride length, cadence, left, right, balance, etc. Now the pace is on the track, it's always going to be off. But what it can give me is a bunch of data on other things, again, such as stride length, such as cadence. So I did use that a lot to look at it. I've also got the split time, so I've got the first 400, I've got the second 400, and I've got the 200. So how did they do? Well, you'll see my results from here appearing on your screen shortly. And I think the first thing to know is I mentioned the snappiness of the Dragonfly that you really noticed. And that first 400 meters was way too quick. I felt like I was putting in the same effort, but that instant acceleration and that feeling of power just surged you forwards to a slightly faster lap than it should have been. So that's worth noting. So what I'm really going to compare is the second 400 meter. The first ones can't really be compared, but the second ones can be. And what you'll see then is the pace is very similar between all of the different shoes. I found that very interesting, but what is different is I feel like these, you've got a lower ground contact time. That springiness, you really came through. I don't think they felt markedly different. I did do an extra rep in these at the end without socks. I don't think I'll do that. I think they did squirrel a bit when I'd got them on my feet generally, but when I hadn't got socks on, they were even more. The answer was, I'm going to be going with the Dragonfly. On the data, there's really not a lot in it. The heart rates are pretty comparable by the end. The paces are pretty comparable by the end. The subjective feel, surprising given I'm a statistician, is what I'm going off of rather than the data. So, post-race, how did I do and what did I do next? Well, in the race, I had a very hot day. It was a 26-degree day at the Milton Keynes 5000 PB Special. I was in nothing other than the F race, which put me about halfway through the day. So some people were very unlucky for them, were running about 1 o'clock in burning heat, all the way through to the elites that were running at 8:45 when it had cooled down a bit. How did it feel different? I could tell I was running in spikes. By 3K, my feet were sore, and you were feeling it particularly across the ball of your foot, so you could tell that there just wasn't that same amount of cushioning, and there was a bit of sliding around happening. You're wearing thin socks because they're spikes, so they were good, but they weren't perfect. So I ran my race, I ran it in the Dragonfly, it went well, 15:41 matching my PB. But what I hadn't mentioned earlier is I've got another 5K tonight. So this is Friday I'm filming this, I've got the Newstead Adidas 5K tonight. Last week was the Milton Keynes 5000 special, PB special in fact, and it was a PB technically. I can explain why afterwards. So what am I going to wear for Newstead? I'm going to wear my Vaporfly because I want to see how these compare, and I think these are probably a better choice for the Newstead roads. So Newstead Abbey Dash is on broken roads. So it's a road, it's a public road, but it's not in perfect condition. If it was in perfect condition, like a racetrack like Mallory Park, where I set my PB, I'd be Alpha Flies. It's not in perfect condition, so I'm going Vaporfly 2. I haven't actually had a good run in these yet, so I'm kind of hoping that this is the one. So then I'll be able to give you a fair comparison of what is it like to run a hard 5,000 meter distance, because that's a 5,000 meters, that is a 5K, and doing that week by week in 2 different sets of shoes. And after that, I can give you a true comparison of what they're really like. So I did my road race, very different profile to a track race. So on a track, it's flat or near enough flat. The course that I did, the Newstead Abbey Dash 5K, is very much net downhill. So downhill for about a mile and then undulating / rolling. So I'll put a course profile somewhere on the video so you can have a little look. So what you can see is it's down and then it's up and down. And what did I do it in? I did it in the next percent 2. So that contrasts to the Dragonfly. How did I do? 15:44, so 15:44 compared to 15:41 on the track. So actually I committed at the start. I went with a kind of 5-minute mile, actually sub 5 minute miles to start with. I tried to hang on for about 15:20, 15:30 is where the winners were. So first place was 15:20, second place 15:36. So I was kind of hoping to be in that range. I just couldn't manage to hang on from about 3K. I ended up finishing 4th. So 15:44 in these. So how did they feel? How did it feel different? Because that is 5,000 meters run either as 5,000 meters or as 5 kilometers, track versus road, and that is a week apart. So how did it feel different? You could really feel the bounce. So as you're in these, you can feel it bouncing you along. It was really noticeable as you're on the slight downhills. The big downhill, you kind of just focused on making sure your legs were keeping up. But when you're on the slight downhills, you could feel this bouncing you along. On the track, you could feel the power that was coming from the snappiness of the track bike, but very different sensation to these on the road. I mean, the result was basically the same. Both were hard runs. I guess that shows where I'm at, is about this level. It's about as good as I've been. It's not better than that, so I'm happy with it. Not delighted with it because it's not a PB. So how did I find it? Yeah, good. Different between the two. So the interesting question then is, having now done a 5K on the road and a 5,000 meters on the track, is if I'm going to do another race on the track, do I miss these? And I think the answer is with these, probably not. I have used the previous version, the Vaporfly one, on a track time trial, and I enjoyed it. It was fine. They were a bit squirmy around the corners, which is not a surprise given the amount of bounce they've got. These have got more of a snap than a bounce, and I think they add something different. Each of these is the best in their respective area. Obviously not nowhere this on the roads, but something like this with the flats, you can tell the difference with these to flats. So I do prefer these or any of the other number of carbon plated shoes, but I did like these too on the track. So I've signed up for another track race. I'm looking forward to that, and I'm going to be keeping these and using these, and I'm not going to miss the fact that I can't use the Vaporfly on the track. I have before, I know others still can do in different areas, and some track races will let you. I honestly don't think you need them, so for that sub-elite runner, I think the conclusion is, yeah, they're really good, and I can see why. So yes, my feet were hurting towards the end, but then my legs were hurting in these. It's just a different sensation. They're each the best in their respective area. This is a definite step forward. I've actually heard these called splats recently, spiked flats, so much more forgiving than a spike. Again, for that non-elite runner, for the elites, it's all kind of the same. You're just going to pick the best spike you can get your hands on. But for that non-elite runner, these are like running in flats, but with a bit of extra oomph and a bit of extra power. So I think they're fantastic. I'm definitely going to wear them again. I've signed up for that track race in 3 weeks' time. I'm looking forward to that, and I think this will be an interesting chance to try and go again, having had a bit of practice, and see if I can just shave that few seconds, because 15:41, 15:42, 15:44, what I don't want to do is fill in the gap with a 15:43. I'd rather be leapfrogging that down to that sort of 15:30 time where I think I can do it. And there you go. I hope that was helpful, and lets you see how I think a Dragonfly fits in for someone that isn't actually that good but really likes their running.